Hey, everybody. We represent the Nashville Public Library Foundation and the Nashville After Zone Alliance, which is housed in the Nashville Public Library. And it's so exciting to be sharing with you and introducing Nashville's vision for holistic youth development. We've talked so many times over the years, but finally we're here. So we're going to play a video that illustrates the journey of how the vision was developed over the last 2 years, and then we'll come back on the other side and share a little bit more with you.
Nashville's vision for holistic youth development is a community-developed, community-based vision for youth. Here is the story of the journey our community took to create that vision. Let's start with NAZA. The Nashville After Zone Alliance is a partnership between Nashville Public Library, Metro Nashville Public Schools, the Mayor's Office, and 20-plus nonprofits and community-based organizations across Nashville. NAZA's mission is to increase equitable access to after-school and summer learning experiences that help Nashville youth thrive and develop to their full potential. Inspired by cities and organizations across the country and local conversations with more than 100 youth development professionals and caregivers, NAZA embarked on a multi-year journey to explore this simple question: what do children and youth in our community need to thrive in education, work, and life? Via the Nashville Public Library Foundation, NAZA received a Community Catalyst initiative grant, which allowed NAZA to partner with a research team from Vanderbilt University's Peabody College to co-lead the vision development process. The grant provided funding and opportunities to learn alongside others who were leading community change efforts in libraries and museums across the country. Our whole community has been on this journey together. Youth, caregivers, families, youth development professionals, educators, community advocates, elected officials, funders, and other supporters were all part of the development of our shared vision. A special group composed of 58 diverse community stakeholders, the Youth Development Working Group, even met quarterly to help guide the vision development process. In addition to community stakeholders, NAZA's partnership with the Peabody research team had a strong foundation in community development, community research, and education. And we learned more tools to support community development throughout the process from the Asset-Based Community Development Institute via the IMLS grant. Based on what we learned from the ABCD Institute, the Nashville team decided to ask community members what gifts of the head, hand, and heart children needed to thrive in education, work, and life, and what assets already existed in the community to support children and youth thriving. Each focus group with community members began with a visioning exercise, allowing youth participants to visualize the best possible future for themselves, and adult participants to visualize the best possible future for their child, student, or a young person in their community. Thinking beyond current conditions and building on what we already have in our community guides us towards our best possible future together. The Peabody research team facilitated 20 focus group discussions with 143 participants, including youth, caregivers, youth development professionals, and school and city stakeholders. 59% of focus group participants were youth and caregivers, and 20% of focus groups were with youth or caregivers who spoke English as a second language. These were the central voices whose ideas shaped the eventual vision. The Youth Development Working Group and youth from the Mayor's Youth Council and NAZA's youth-led initiative, Youth in Action, used the focus group data to rank what they believed were the top 10 skills youth needed from the list of more than 30. The Peabody team analyzed data and responses along the way. The Youth Outcomes team, a 19-member group, met 5 times to dive into the research and engage in in-depth discussions to recommend vision components for adoption. Ultimately, the group recommended and the Youth Development Working Group adopted 12 individual growth practices and 4 community growth practices to support holistic youth development. Throughout the focus groups and reflection conversations with various stakeholders, it became clear that children and youth cannot thrive without a thriving community, since they are so strongly impacted by the ecosystem in which they are embedded, including relationships, systems, and our society's beliefs. Over 200 community members were involved in the development of Nashville's vision for holistic youth development from 2019 to 2020. The vision guides us towards the best possible future by prioritizing essential individual and community growth practices that children and youth need to thrive in their learning ecosystem. When we reflect on the journey, 3 things become clear. 1. Nashville's vision assumes that learning happens all the time and everywhere. The goal of learning is to help you thrive in life, and learning is a social, emotional, and cognitive process. 2. Nashville's vision centers on youth and caregiver voices and lived experiences. 3. Nashville's vision goes beyond the individual focus to define how our community can help you thrive through practices that deepen relationships, better systems, and shift beliefs. Nashville embarked on a journey to explore the question, what do children and youth need to thrive in education, work, and life? What emerged is Nashville's vision for holistic youth development. We would like to extend a special thank you to Vanderbilt University's Peabody College, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration for their support. For more information about NAZA's partners and supporters, please visit nashvillez.org.
So this is Nashville's vision. Ta-da! What came out of that process that you just heard about, we mentioned that there were sort of 12 individual growth practices, and those are sort of things that both youth and youth development professionals, caregivers, that really all of us can be cultivating within ourselves. So this kind of came into 3 categories: cultivate, which are mindsets that we can shift; connect, which comes into social and emotional skills; and then grow, which are cognitive skills. But the more we got into this process, I think that it's not surprising looking back, but we started with a community-based process, and what we ended up with was a community-based vision, which seems obvious now, but it was something that really emerged for us. And so it was really important to have these community growth practices. What are those things that we can all be doing as a community to support young people? And the ways that we've kind of, the things that sort of emerged in this process were for us to be able to honor interconnection as a community, to do storytelling as both a way to connect with one another, but also to story tell about what we want in the future and what we want our community to look like, to honor youth leadership, to really get out of the way and let our young people lead, but also to do what we can as a community to support equity, access, and justice, to really support our young people as they go through life and progress in our community. So what we also realized was that we wanted everyone to feel like they had an entry point into this work, that it's not just about young people, it's not just about caregivers or youth development professionals, but really we all have a role to play in supporting youth and practicing these growth practices so that we can support young people in their learning ecosystems. And so the ways that really plays out, schools, nonprofits, community programs have a role to play, parents and caregivers, youth development professionals. I think there's a couple more, community advocates, policymakers, and elected officials. And so that's kind of our next phase as we work into this is, what does this look like? We have this great vision, we have this thing that we know that we're working towards as a community, but what role do each of us have to play in advancing this vision and sort of realizing it? And I think Marielle is going to share a little bit with you about how NAZA specifically is going to take on this next step.
We have learned so much in this process, and we are investing in youth-led and adult-supported work. We're investing in partner leadership. We're centering those voices as we look at our next strategic plan in the next 5 years, thinking about how do we center and invest in youth-led and partner-led work? How do we center equity? How do we center asset-based approaches? And how do we center this vision? And honestly, it's like a weekly conversation. So we have changed so much and we're growing so much, and we're grateful to all of you. And we're grateful to the ABCD Institute and Joe in particular, and IMLS for this incredible work that is like no other grant that I have ever had. So thank you all.
In Nashville, I happened to sit in on 2 of the focus groups, one with youth and one with caregivers. And the stories just around those. And when you had a group of kids talking about their gifts of the head, heart, and hands, and then their parents going through it in a separate discussion, the community that developed around that, just that discussion within those rooms was a story in and of itself. And how, especially during Nashville, during this project, has been through so much between tornadoes, the bombing that everyone heard about recently, the pandemic that we're all going through, but continually adjusting and watching how young people got so involved in the youth in action groups when they couldn't meet in person, to where they were getting 40 and 50 peoples on calls. And when they did their big community-wide presentation, how it was 90%, maybe higher, Marielle or Rachel could correct me, delivered by youth from their community, was just a really powerful presentation and showed how youth really led and designed that whole project.